Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Behind the Smile. Today in the studio, we have Alex Crouch. Alex is a 42-year-old psychotherapist and single father of 2 boys. After overcoming his struggles with alcoholism 6 years ago, Alex has the honour of helping other men with their addictions, their mental health disorders, their life direction, and sex therapy. Now, I'm really excited to dive into some of those topics today, so let's get into it, shall we? Firstly, Alex, welcome to Behind the Smile. How are you today?
I'm well. Thank you for having me. This is obviously my first time on here, and as I mentioned to you off camera before, I've listened to a few episodes before this and really happy that you've done so well.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so for those who don't know, Alex and I actually met in the rooms of recovery. Gosh, it would have been over 3 yees ago now. I moved back to Melbourne in 2021. Yeah, well, kind of like, that second year, I guess. But you knew my dad, didn't you? So, because he kind of had a bit of a role in getting you sober. We can maybe get into that a little bit later.
Let's get into it later.
Yeah, so there was kind of that connection, and then you were friends with my now fiance, and yeah, it's been beautiful to have our paths kind of cross over one another over the last few years, and I'm really excited to have this conversation today. You've come so far, and I know that you've got a lot to give, so let's dive into it. To kick things off, Alex, I'd love for our audience to get to know you a little bit better. So let's start with, where do you live? What does an average day look like? And what do you do for fun?
Sure. So I live in Melbourne.
Yes.
The average day looks like, I see clients Monday to Saturday. Sometimes clients, it's easier for them to come and see me on Saturday. So I'll see a few of them. Often Monday to Fridays can be quite busy. Do some group work as well at some of the rehabs that I work at as well. Then I'll hit the gym and see my kids, and that's normally the day. During the weekend, and to lead into what I do for fun, again, gym, beach is my happy place. That's my go-to. That's where colour blue is my favourite. I don't know if you can tell.
Why do you live in Melbourne then?
Yeah, right. I love Melbourne. I honestly feel, having lived in Brisbane for a year and visited Sydney many times and a few other cities, I feel like Melbourne's just got that right mixture for everything that I need in the city. So I love Melbourne. And then, go out with my friends for dinner. I am dating at the moment, so maybe take a beautiful girl out for dinner as well, or to, for a nice walk along the beach, whatever it may be. So that's what I do for fun, and obviously spend time with my kids.
Beautiful. How old are your boys?
So my boys are 10 and 8, and they're the love of my life. They're really, I can't think of anything that I'm more proud of than being the father to those boys.
That's amazing, and it must be so special for you to be able to father them sober, because when they were born, you were still drinking, right?
Yes, good maths, yeah. So I am in my 7th year of recovery, and when I stopped drinking, they were 3 and 1. So
wow, they probably wouldn't ever remember dad drinking.
Certainly not the 1-year-old. The 3-year-old has never brought it up. Part of me thought, would he remember something that happened when he was 3? Maybe the police come into the house to take me away. He doesn't bring that up. I don't think he does remember it. So, I hope that always remains the case.
Yeah. Wow. What a gift. What a gift. Well, Alex, I've asked you to bring in a photo today. And this photo is from a time in your life where you were hiding behind a smile. So you were presenting one version of yourself to the outside world, but the reality was you were struggling on the inside. For those who are listening along and perhaps not watching this video right now, could you please describe for the photo that I'm going to bring up on the screen what we are looking at here, and also what was actually going on for you at that time in your life?
Sure. So you asked me to bring the photo. I had a look, actually. I went on Facebook and kind of scrolled all the way to the bottom.
It's terrifying, isn't it?
And, most of my drinking I did before Facebook was around, back in the uni days anyway. So I'm grateful for that, because I feel the young ones these days will be a bit harder for them.
Oh my goodness. Could you imagine?
I still remember a time at uni, a guy took a few of my photos of me puking outside a party. And then we went to the bar the next day, and he plastered the photos all over the bar of me puking. And everyone, there was about 20 of them, everyone just waited for my reaction. And I laughed and went along with it. But I can't imagine what it'd be like for the younger generation these days. In that photo, that's me at 20. I'm at uni. That would have been my third year of university, which I went to straight after high school. And, I'm presenting as a guy with a big smile. I'm obviously quite intoxicated in that photo. And that was me at uni. A lot of university life for me was drinking and showing people that I was, this happy-go-lucky guy. I knew a lot of people. We can touch on that in a bit. But if you've seen the movie Van Wilder,
I actually
with
haven't.
Ryan Reynolds, so he's like the go-to guy at university or college in America, and I was that guy. So if you did a survey of the 20,000 people that went to university, I would have been the most well-known guy at uni. And that may sound egotistical and vain, and call it what you will. I will agree with that, but that was important to me. And drinking and alcohol and a bit of party drugs allowed me to do that, allowed me to be that guy. But deep down, to your point about hiding behind the smile, that's not how I actually felt.
How did you actually feel?
I felt very lost, alone, misunderstood. I felt like I wasn't a part of anything. Like I felt like I was very on my own, and I used alcohol to fit in and be a part of. And that's what alcohol allowed me. It's no wonder I fell in love with it so quickly.
I mean, I feel like there would be a lot of people listening along who could probably relate to those university years, those years out of school being quite heavily involved around drinking and partying. What made it different for you? What's the difference between, say, the average drinker or the average, late teen who's just kind of diving into that culture and that scene versus someone like you and I who have an addiction?
Sure, great question, right? Because I drank with a lot of people at university, and there's only one guy upon reflection, this is 20 years plus ago, that I can remember that drank like me. And what I mean by that is we went for 5 days straight with no drugs, just alcohol, pass out, wake up, drink again. Now, to my knowledge, a normal person just doesn't do that, So they'll go out, they'll have a big night. They may even go one for one with me, so their tolerance may be there. And the next day they'll get up and they just, they'll have a bit of a break, At uni days, sometimes they'll go 2-3 nights in a row, sure. What I've noticed is it's for me, it's how quickly I drank and also how much I wanted to do it again. And to my knowledge, I've been open about the fact that I'm in recovery. I posted on Facebook. I'm friends with some people from university and school days. I've had a few reach out to me. They're like, oh, wow, I remember that guy, right? And now he's sober. Well, tell me what to do about it. And I've done my best to help them as well, at least share the journey that I've been through to get clean and sober.
Yeah. And I really want to know, at that time in your life, were there any consequences to the way that you were drinking, or was it all kind of pretty socially acceptable at that time?
Great question. Because what I've realized is we start off drinking and it's often fun. And there were some fun times. Some people in recovery are like, oh, it was all horrible. Well, not my personal experience. There was some fun. Then you get fun with consequences, as I say. And then it's just all consequences. So the university days, I'm still living at home with mama, right? I am, as long as I'm going to university, no one's really asking too many questions. Somehow I'm passing. Yes, I delayed my passing by a year because I failed a few subjects. But, from 3 years, it went to 4-year course. But I did it, I passed. And, the consequences are just not that bad on the surface level. There's no kids, obviously, to be a father to. I'm working part-time, I'm getting a little bit of money. So, the consequences are minimal. But then it starts, the drink driving, I get caught, I lose my license for the first time. I remember blowing 0.14, whatever you blow, you get in months back then. So I got 14 months.
Oh, is that how it worked?
Well, they did back then. I know they're stricter now.
Yeah.
Then they get caught again because, I don't learn. Mind you, in the 40 months, I'm driving the whole time. I just don't get caught, go back to court, get my license done. A few years later, I get caught again, this time 0.13. So I'm getting better, right? But now you get it doubled because it's the second time.
Right.
So now it's 26 months.
Oof.
Mind you, I'm still on my P's, right?
my
So I'm meant to be on
goodness.
0 as it is. And then mandatory interlock for 6 months. To my knowledge, it's mandatory interlock for 6 months for everyone now, which is great. I think it's great that they're, our government's quite strong on that. And I remember I didn't drive. The judge said, you do it again, you're going to jail. Really scared me. So I didn't drive for those 26 months. I got my license back. And I remember having nightmares where I would drive because having had a drink and then still drive. And I remember just like waking up in the sweat and waking up, oh my God, no, I didn't do it. Oh, thank God. And I ended up doing it again. When I got into my 30s, I would get drunk. This is before they delivered alcohol. It was very early days. I think there was tipple or something back then, but took forever. So, I drank drive to get more alcohol because when I run out and it's 2 a.m, I'm still awake, I need more alcohol. So I'm off to the 24-hour bottle shop.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe I did it. And I was lucky not to get caught again. Having said that, though, that's when I started to lose that power of choice.
Wow. I want to come back to this point because it sounds like that might have been pretty close towards your rock bottom. But before we get there, I think it's really important for us to understand who you were as a child and the experiences that you had that led you into becoming the man that you were, and then we'll get into the man that you are today. So could you please describe for our listeners what your experience was like growing up, because you do have quite a unique story, and share with us how that impacted your relationship with alcohol further down the track?
Sure. So I'm from a country that doesn't even exist anymore, from USSR, the biggest country in the world. It broke up in 91 and fell into 15 countries, Russia, Ukraine being the two that most people are aware of. They're at war at the moment as we speak with each other. So I was in a little country called Moldova, but we were Russians. I'm half Russian, half Ukrainian. And so we came here the following year, 92, when I was 9, on skilled migration. And I come here with no English. I don't speak English for the first 6 months. So hard to fit in and make friends at school when in year 4 I was, when you don't speak any English. And, I've got a little baby sister, and, there's a small community, Russian community, with kids around my age. I don't seemingly fit in with them, and I get sort of teased a bit there. And then at school, I'm not really making any friends. So from the age of 9 to 14, I just felt really lonely. I remember this was before Netflix. There was Channel 7, 9 and 10. I would tell you the program on every hour of every day what was on TV, because TV was my best friend. So that's how I spent those first 5 years when I got to Australia. And at the age of 14, I went to a house party and there was no alcohol, and I felt so awkward, and it was the worst. And then got out of there somehow. The following weekend, there was another house party, and this time they had alcohol. And I remember still, there was about a glass that size with vodka, and I just sculled it, as did my best friend at the time. And, it just didn't hit me instantly. So I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I need more. So I go and I scull another one. This is the first time. I've had a beer or a wine here or there, but just didn't do anything for me. In fact, I thought beer, like VB, I remember thinking, this is disgusting. How do people drink this? Right? And then once I had that second, I remember within 5 minutes, and it was like, oh, yes. And that feeling was, that was my first spiritual experience. I still remember how amazing I felt when those 2 glasses of vodka hit me. And for the next hour and a half, I'd arrived, as it's spoken about. I was on the dance floor, I was dancing. Suddenly all the girls that were there, felt very comfortable talking to them. The guys that I struggled to connect with, suddenly I just feel so connected to them. Someone who has always struggled to make friends and connect, thinking it's because of my background, suddenly they were all my best friends. And I was in and part of life, having spent 5 years kind of being from the outside looking in. And one thing I wanted to touch on as well is when I got into recovery, your family was part of helping me realize this, that even those that grew up here and played footy or cricket, I was a tennis player, so a very lonely game, right? It's my head versus the opponent's head. So they played footy, cricket, they grew up here, they had heaps of cousins and friends and whatnot. So what I thought I'd missed out on, hence I felt how I felt, they too expressed that they always felt like they were from outside, kind of looking into life. It could never just connect and be a part of life. And so I realized it wasn't anything to do with me coming here. that's just part of the disease that I suffer from, as I realized later on in life.
Do you have anyone in your family that struggles with addiction? Like, is there any sort of alcoholism or any other sort of isms that play out?
I'd say every male in my family is an alcoholic.
Yeah, wow. Okay.
So that's my dad, who's still with us. He's somehow worked out a way he's retired now, just basically sits at home and drinks, but he's somehow managed to keep it to a level where it works for him. But yeah, it's the country that I come from, you could argue, has the highest alcoholism rate in the world.
Well, don't you mean you'd be drinking vodka for breakfast,
right?
It's just
so
normal.
Vodka and caviar.
Yeah.
And I know the Scottish and the Irish would argue that, but everyone knows Russians and vodka and alcoholism kind of go hand in hand. So, I know how to stay there. Where our first 9 years, having said, I just want to reiterate, the first 9 years were amazing. I felt a part of, I had friends, everything was good, even though we lived in what's now considered the most poorest country in Europe. Yet I just, I was a kid, I had everything. And then my troubles sort of began when I got here. Having said that, though, I know had I stayed there, I know I still would have been an alcoholic.
Yeah, so it was perhaps nature and nurture in a sense. It was the circumstances of feeling disconnected, that probably would have happened had you stayed where you were, but perhaps it felt more accelerated having to go through such a huge change, like moving countries at 9 years old to a country that you don't know the language of. Like that's a really difficult age. You're starting to hit puberty, and that's just even 9-year-old boys that have been born in Australia will find that period of life, and girls, really challenging. What else was it like? I mean, your parents, did they speak English? Like, where were you living? Was there much, did you guys have money? Like, what was all that like?
So we ended up living in a nice suburb of Melbourne, Armidale. I thought Melbourne was Armidale. I didn't realise there were other parts to it. So, but we lived in, this really small apartment. When the grandmas came over, it was 6 of us living in a 2-bedroom apartment. So,
wow.
We're eating sort of rice and potatoes for the first 2 years. Having said that, though, because that's how I kind of knew that my first 9 years, I didn't really think anything of it. It wasn't a big deal to me. You only know you're poor when you have someone to compare it to. If you are living somewhere and everyone eats rice and potatoes and lives in a, relatively sort of crappy apartment, but that's just how everyone is, you just assume that it's normal. So I realized it's just the comparison that only makes one realize that they're poor. And so, for me, it was tough to fit in. And I just want to touch on the rest of high school. I'm getting teased, I'm getting bullied. I have 1 or 2 friends, but I feel like I struggled to fit in with them. And then at the age of 15 and 16 and in year 10 and 11, I go, well, why don't I drink at school? And so I start bringing bottles of vodka, but I put them in the Mount Franklin bottle. And now I'm, drinking basically a bottle of vodka a day at school. And suddenly I'm friends with the popular kids at school. The kids that tease me are now my friends. And again, I never truly feel like they're my friends, but they let me hang out with them. Or, Alex is kind of cool, I guess, because when I drink, what I've realized is alcohol helps me to deal with life, and it helps me get through life. And what I consider to be, I become the best version of myself. Certainly that's what I thought was the case. And, at start of year 12, when I'm 17, I get an ulcer in my stomach, I'm hospitalized. Because, alcohol is not a health food, right? And your body is still so young and developing.
Wow.
I'm bleeding out, my nails are caved in, all these students and doctors are coming in taking photos of me like I'm some sort of a, someone they're trying to study because I've only read about people like me. And anyway, they fix it, and to coincide with year 12, I'm like, all right, I'm going to study really hard. I'm going to, make sure that I do everything possible to finish school as well as I can. I do that, I go into uni, and I'm just struggling at uni to make friends, and my school friends all drop off. They're all, they were never really my friends to begin with. And then the second year of uni, first day, I'm at Heat nightclub the night before, and I go to O Week on a Monday morning, still, energetic. So obviously use something else to help me stay up. And I go to the bar at the Einstein's bar. That was my home for the next 3 years. And within months, I know everyone, and everyone knows me. And I, as the saying goes, I'd arrived. So when someone tells me alcohol is my problem, I really struggle to understand what they mean. I know it's problematic, but I'm like, you can't take this away from me. This is how I do life.
Hang on a minute. I just need to fathom. So in year 12, you were hospitalised for alcohol abuse. Did they know that it was alcohol that was causing the ulcers and the caving in of the nails? So did they then say to you, you can't drink anymore? Like, was there ever that conversation?
Not that I remember. They, a lot of alcohol intake caused the ulcer. But I mean, ulcers can be caused, I guess, by other things. And, I wouldn't have been honest with them about how much I drank. So I probably said, I had a few big nights and whatever. And, so I don't remember them sitting me down, having a deep and meaningful with me about the dangers of alcohol.
Yeah.
And then I did slow it down, and they also never returned again. So I take it that it was just my young body not being able to process alcohol that well. So that's how I found myself at university.
Okay, so you're at university, you're living your best life, you're partying, you know everyone. I'm imagining that you graduate, and then bring me up to date with how you got from that point to being married with 2 children.
Sure. So I finished university at 21, 22. The problem with university is you have to finish it because I would have loved to just, if it was up to me, I'd still be there. Because, you're still living at home. There's no responsibilities. You're living it up. You're partying every night if you want to. And so I graduate. They give me my Bachelor of Commerce, and I get into the business world. And, I don't really know what I'm doing. I was going to get into advertising. I get a placement at one of the best advertising agencies in Melbourne, in the world, with an office in Melbourne. And I get drunk on the Sunday night, and I rock up on Monday on my first day. That's how I was going at the time. And I am just going through job to job, just trying to work out what to do, doing a lot of sales, account management, kind of easy roles to get, as long as you sort of speak English and, can talk and have a bit of confidence, you can pretty much get that job. But I'm getting fired for them because I'm not rocking up. Trying to go to work on a Monday was like, how do people do this?
How does that work?
Why would you, why? And so up until the age of 25, I'm really struggling, but luckily I'm still able to live at home. So I got the support of my mum. My mum and dad had separated at the time, by this stage. And then I go back home to where I'm from originally, so Russia, and then Moldova, the country I'm from. And then I see my uncle, who used to have a massive alcohol problem, but he has this beautiful wife, and, they have a child who's my one and only cousin. I've only got one cousin. And just the way she looks after him and the home, I'm like, that's what I need. I need a wife, right? That's what I've been missing. Because like a lot of people in my situation, I'm trying to find something external to hopefully fix how I feel internally. And so, work is a big one, and of course relationships. And it just so happens that 2 months later, I meet the woman that was to become my wife.
Wow.
And so we're together for the next 9-10 years. And, she really does help me. So I'm a guy, when I'm in untreated alcoholism, I'm a guy that comes home on a Tuesday and I need someone to tell me, you're not drinking tonight. It's Tuesday night. You got work tomorrow. And I need that. I need some sort of consequence to not drink, because if it was up to me at that stage, I'd be drinking every night and there'd be no work to go to, and eventually there'd be no home to come back to as well. So she does help me, but I continue to feel like I just struggle to live life, and we get to a point where she co-signs off on it as well. Friday night is your night. Just go to work Monday to Friday, but you can get as wasted as you want Friday night. And of course I hear Friday night. I mean, to me, that means until she gets up Saturday morning, which she gets up about 8:30. So to me, that's Friday nights, right? As long as I can get to sleep before she's awake, she won't know what time I got in. And so that's every Friday night for a number of years. And I just don't feel right. And I'm thinking, okay, there's only one thing I can think of that's left, and that's let's have kids. We have 2 dogs by this stage. We live in a nice area. We've got 2 cars. I'm ticking all the boxes that society tells you need to have to be happy in this world. I still remember we moved into this beautiful home, the best house I've ever lived in. And I remember lying there, and my wife is still unpacking. And I remember just looking around and going, I'm still miserable.
Yeah, I don't feel what I thought I would feel.
Yeah.
I can so relate to that. Yeah.
It's a really...
And you think that there's something wrong with you because you're like, I should I should be like,
The shoulds kick in, yeah.
yeah, it's freaking shoulds. And it does. And then it's like, well, alcohol gives you the relief from the noise in your head, which is telling you that you're not enough. Yeah, absolutely.
The biggest thing I've realized is, for me, when I went through some of the fears that I have in my life, is the biggest fear I have is that I'm not enough. It all came down to that for me.
Yeah, that's definitely like my core wound, 1000% is I am unworthy, which is basically I am not enough. I know for me that came from some different childhood experiences, and I don't blame my parents for any of that, but I do know, I can now see, and it was actually through the process of intensive therapy that the light was shone on this for me, that a lot of that unworthiness came from not having my needs met as a child. Do you think that was a similar experience for you upon reflection?
Yeah, I do. I try not to overly, think about what kind of got me to where I'm at, or how did I end up this way. I saw my dad, give my mum black eyes. I didn't realize how traumatic that was for me until later on. Feeling like I so wanted to protect her and I couldn't, and then I always took my mum's side. And so I lived with her when they split up, and hated my dad for a long time. And, through the process of recovery, I was able to, really forgive him to my best ability, as far as, because he gambled and he, as I mentioned before, was an untreated alcoholic himself. So the program of recovery really showed me, like, how can you be mad at a person who's clearly sick themselves without laying any judgment on them, just seeing the reality of it. And, I went and made amends to him as well, for my wrongs in the relationship. Because I'll tell you this, every time I got arrested and I was in the lockup, or every time I was stuck in the city at 3 a.m, he's the first person I still called. So, it's an interesting relationship that I have with him, as I know a lot of, boys who become men have with their fathers. And but then I was doing therapy myself at about 5 years already into recovery. And I'm working with a therapist that works with a lot of people who are in recovery. And he goes, "Hey, Alex, I know, and how's your relationship with your dad?" And I go, "Yeah, look, he did the best he could with the tools that he had." He's like, "Yeah, okay, that's great." And he hears this a lot, obviously. So he's like, "Okay, let's explore this further." And then he really just like got me to connect with my feelings. And he's like, "How do you really feel about him?" And I'm like, "I effing hate him," and it really just came out of me. And there it was, that suppressed emotion was still very much there. And he goes, "Alex, you've intellectualized the fact that he did the best he could with the tools that he had, and certainly that's healthy. Yet that suppressed emotion is still very much in you, and it's affecting you to this day. And, I realize I need to do more work to release myself of all the suppressed emotions that are, causing me anxiety and causing me, things that I don't want to feel, and are holding me back from being the best version of myself."
And I know that you've started doing a bit of breath work, right?
I have, yes.
How's that gone with the releasing?
Love breath work.
Yeah.
What I came to realize is, me personally, I have problems with crying in front of, in particular, other men. I need to work on more on why that's the case. If I want to cry, like, I need to put a movie on, especially father-son type of relationship type of movies, because I've got boys, and, me and my relationship with my dad, and the tears will come out. But otherwise, I can't cry for some reason. So I'm still working on that. Yet I really feel a lot of peace after I finish a breathwork class.
Beautiful. Yeah.
And I can't recommend it strongly enough. I wish I did it earlier myself.
Oh, you know what? It's just amazing that you're doing it now. I always ask that question, with my clients who I work with. Some clients will be doing coaching, and I always recommend, when I'm doing one-on-one coaching, to incorporate at least once a month some form of somatic work, which is 9 times out of 10 breath work, because there is just so much in our body that we cannot process intellectually. It has to be somatic. It has to be unconscious, through the subconscious. And I just don't know any other way that gets you there faster and more effectively than breakthrough breath work.
And it's great that it's something that you are offering and doing, and it's something that I'd love to do more in this year. And I've made a commitment to myself to do more over this year, because I've already seen the benefits, and I've only kind of scratched the surface. So I really want to get more deeper and into it, having seen the benefits for myself, but also hearing what other people have gone through, releasing PTSD trauma stored in their bodies for 30 plus years.
Absolutely. So let's talk about, for many people, there's a moment, we call it a rock bottom. I want to know was there one specific moment that you go, that was the turning point, or was there sort of like a period of time where there were multiple occurrences and then the writing was on the wall?
Well, is it both? As I touched on before, the writing on the wall was very earlier on. You could argue at 15, 16, who drinks a bottle of vodka to get through the school day, and the loss of licenses and the lockups for drunk and disorderly and the rest of it. Yet that's my solution to life. I ain't giving it up. I'm scared so I feel like what works, and what I've observed a lot of people who get into recovery, what works for them is that rock bottom. And where something just happens where it's like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I really can't do this anymore. And like, I feel like a lot of things have to happen for us to get to that point. And for me, I ended up going to your dad's house. Can I share the story?
Of course, yeah, he won't mind. He's been on here a few times.
So I go to your dad's house, drunk, of course, and I bring a bottle of wine with me, thinking that you and your dad, who I know is in recovery, will have a drink and chat about my alcohol problem, right? I just think it's...
Like, surely that's how it works.
I just think what a genius idea that is. And, your dad kindly says, no, you leave a bottle of wine outside. This is a sober house. And then, proceeds to encourage me to go to rehab, which is, I'm grateful that he did. And I remember saying to him, oh, well, what about work? And he's like, well, do you work now? I go, no, I'm unemployed. How am I going to get a job? I'm drunk all the time. It's like, well, what are you worried about?
Isn't it one of the most common, and I'm sure you see this with your clients now who are struggling with addiction, is there's always a reason why, like, the disease of alcoholism doesn't want you to stop drinking. So it will pull up any excuse known to man. And, one of the brilliant ones I often hear is people go, well, I can't get sober because I can't imagine ever not being able to have a drink at my daughter's wedding. And it's like, you don't have kids. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, we future trip about all the reasons why we can't. And it's just the disease being really sneaky and keeping us away from the one solution, which is abstinence.
For a guy like me who's an alcoholic, I need abstinence. So and I'm sure you would have spoken about this on your podcast before, once I start, I can't stop. I process alcohol differently to the, even a hard drinker who may go one for one with me, who may have really hit it hard and got into a lot of problems, but he can stop or moderate given sufficient enough reason. The wife leaving, loss of income and lots of work.
Yeah, health.
Health, of course, reasons. Doctor saying you got to stop because your liver's failing, that sort of thing. They can stop, or they can do something that I can't do, moderate. Meaning they can have 2 drinks a night for the rest of their life. Because they can stop after 2. If I could, I would be having 2 drinks every night as well, because nothing overly bad's going to happen if I have 2 drinks and stop every night. Obviously, I can't. So abstinence is a solution for me.
So let's go back to dad tells you to go to rehab.
Yes, your dad tells me to go to rehab. My dad's there as well, mind you. Yeah, he's the one that drove me to your dad's house, so our dads have met. I just remember that. And so I go to rehab and I really learn about, step 1, about that once I start, I can't stop. I always thought it was a willpower issue. I thought there was something wrong with me. I'm weak. Something, I'm bad. I don't know. And I know a lot of people who, before they get into recovery, they feel and think the same thing. And it's explained to me that no, nothing's wrong with you per se. You're just an alcoholic. And once you start, you can't stop, meaning the only solution for you is don't pick up that first drink. Can't get drunk if you don't pick up the first drink. I loved finding that out because I thought maybe it's the 8th or the 10th. No, it's the first. Right? So that simplifies it, and it's like, all right, that makes sense. Cool. Now, of course, if that was that easy, then there'd be no need for 12-step fellowships or any, or therapy or anything. We just get on with our lives and never pick up that first drink. And of course, what I learned then is that there's another part of it, which is I can't stay stopped on my own without help. And, I do the 4 weeks, I come out, within 2 weeks, I'm drinking again.
Wow.
Right? So, and I know that's a lot of people have these experiences. And I'm at the best rehab to my knowledge in the state that I live in, and one of the best in Australia. There's nothing wrong with the rehab. They've done their part. It's just, I on my own cannot not pick up that first drink. And leading to your initial question about rock bottom, so I've got an intervention order. My wife and I have separated. There's now an intervention order in place against her and the kids, which the police took out, meaning I can't be within 200 meters of them if I have alcohol in my system. So it's a relatively easy one to keep as long as I don't drink, right? But I can't stop drinking. I keep breaching it. She's very forgiving and understanding. She keeps letting me off. But on this one day, about 6 weeks after I relapsed, I'm over at their house, and the cops are about to be called. I just get out away from them. I go back and I'm home, and I'm walking across the bridge, and I start looking down, and the first time suicide popped into my head was then. One and only time. Thank God for me. I'm lucky in that sense. And I'm like, those cars are driving past, and I'm just, I'm at the point where it's like, and this is the rock bottom, where I can't live and continue to drink, and I can't live and not drink. And it's a really horrible position to find oneself in. However, that's also a good position to find oneself in, because then it's like, well, what am I going to do? Yes, I can jump and end it, or I can really get into recovery and do all the suggested things. But I did something else. I then go to Mum's house. She's not there. Her partner's there. He looks at me. He's always great to me. He just gave me a bit of a look, and I go to the kitchen, I grab a knife, and I proceed to try and stab him. And the reason I believe I did that in hindsight is I was in an alcoholic psychosis, is I was just angry, because I realized that I can't, when I was thinking about ending it, the photos of my kids came up. And right there and then I knew I didn't think much of myself, but I could never do it to them. So suicide, that third potential door that maybe was in the back of my mind that I could take, was shut. And then it's living back to the two options: live life and drink, and live life and not drink. And they just didn't seem very appealing options at the time. And I think I was just so angry, I just needed to take it out on someone. And unfortunately, my mum's partner, was just there at the wrong place at the wrong time.
And so were the police called? What happened?
Luckily, I believe, God intervened in that moment, and he was able to barricade himself into his room. And I was able to go outside. Something was stopping me even when I had the knife. I remember that. And then within 10 minutes, I just snapped out of it.
Wow.
And I called the rehab that I was in. This was a Sunday. They said, you can come in Tuesday morning. And on Monday, this is my last day of drinking, hopefully, on the 11th of June, 2018. I'm broke. I literally stay at my mum's house. I scabbed $10 of her, right? This is a 35-year-old university graduate with 2 kids. And I go to Aldi, and they used to have like $3 bottles of wine. So I get 3 bottles. Normally wouldn't be enough for me, but that's all I can afford with the $10 I just scabbed off my mum, right? And I get a chocolate bar for 85 cents, and I get the bags. Back then they were 15 cents or whatever. And, I drink that slowly. I am popping heaps of Valium as well. And the following day I get into rehab, and I haven't had a drink since.
Wow. What a way to come rolling in, steamrolling in, I should say. So what's made it different this time? What's worked? Why have you, apart from like the miracle that is recovery, like why has it worked for you this time?
Well, I feel having that rock bottom, I really realized that, I've got to grab a hold of recovery with, desperation of a drowning man, as it's spoken about in the literature. And I just gave it my all. And I was very lucky that I found a man that had what I wanted. And I find it's easier to, and I'll get to this in a bit as well, I had no male role models to look up to. Like, I love Tony Robbins, and I had been to a seminar, and that was an amazing 4-day experience, but I just had no male role models. And I found a man in the rooms that had what I wanted, and I went up to him and I said, hey, whatever you did, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And the beautiful thing about recovery, in school they teach you don't plagiarize, don't cheat, have your own ideas. Here it's like the opposite. It's like, please plagiarize, please just do exactly as we tell you to do. And so I feel like doing that with someone that has what I wanted really made it easy. And I just did all the suggested things. And, they say it's willingness, honesty, open-mindedness are the essentials to recovery. I had the willingness because of the desperation and the rock bottom I was open-minded, because I mean, it's like, why not be open-minded when you're truly
Out of options.
desperate and out of options? Yeah, it's like, hey, if the guy told me to meet him at 4 o'clock every morning and we're gonna pray to a chicken, then I would have done it. If I could truly see that worked for him, I'm like, I'll just do whatever you tell me to do. The honesty part, that's one I've struggled with. I'll be honest with you. I didn't mean for that to happen. The reason I struggle with it is, and we can talk about this, is I'm such a people pleaser. I just want everyone to like me and validate me, because when I come into recovery, I have low self-esteem. Now, I can hide behind the smile and try and pretend that everything's good. And most people would never, a lot of people that knew me, especially through work, wouldn't have even known that I had any issues. They see the marriage, the kids, the nice house, me putting on this fake smile at work. They don't even know anything's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously not right at the end, but, there were times when it looked okay.
Yeah.
And, but it wasn't, obviously.
Yeah. I just relate to that on so many different levels. And I love what you said about finding somebody who has what you wanted and then you simply do what they do. Like, it really is that simple, but you've got to have those key elements, the open-mindedness, the willingness, and the honesty. I totally relate to the people pleaser behavior traits, the need for external validation, the high ego, low self-esteem, which we talk about in the rooms of recovery. And that's not something that shed overnight for me. And the dishonesty as well was really ingrained in me, so much so that I didn't even know that I was doing it. And I was being dishonest with myself. So it's really, really hard. And I think that's what's so powerful about a 12-step program and going through the process of the steps, is like all of this stuff gets revealed to you and then you get taught how to do the opposite action. And that, surprisingly or unsurprisingly, starts to course correct life and great things start to happen. What has that process looked like for you?
So early recovery is hard, right? Because like the one thing, so before my last drink, the last 5 years, I was a daily Valium user as well. So I got addicted to Valium. I still remember the first time I had a Valium. I remember I was at work and I'm looking at people going, is everyone on Valium? Because they seem to be, like calm and relatively, like they seem to be doing a lot better than I am. So I'm like, have I just missed out on what everyone's on? Is that what's happening? It was instant addiction, like instant, So you take everything away from me. Now I'm completely clean and sober. And, early recovery is difficult. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Things pop up. In my experience, working with a lot of men, being part of a men's group, is you put down the drinks and the drugs, and it's often romance and finance seem to pop up. They seem to be the big two that pop up for most people in recovery. For some people, it's, shopping or gambling. My dad was a gambler and he put me off it completely, so luckily I don't have an issue there. But it seems to be it's almost something, because ultimately I'm left on my own. I feel scared and frightened, and I don't know how to do life on my own. And I'm doing the suggested things, and that's keeping me sober. Yet it takes time.
And I think naturally we're still trying to fill the void. Like, you don't get sober and then all of a sudden the void is filled and you're magically cured. Like, the void is still there. It takes years of work, has been my experience, to actually learn how to build self-esteem and internally validate, to have that self-worth, which you and I both didn't have as children. Yep. And then growing, like, that takes daily practice and consistency. So of course it's going to be natural to look for things outside of ourselves to fill that God-shaped hole when our number one solution, which was alcohol, has been removed.
Completely agree with you. And the thing is, I live in the Western society, in the Western world, where it's very much, go and work hard and chase money and get the house and
material
objects, the material things that are so heavily promoted. And so, what I've realized is when I come into recovery, I'm asked to go against the grain. For the beginning is I can't have a drink, whereas most people can. So I'm already in the minority in that sense. But I'm also living in this Western world that's just consumed with get this and get that and make sure you're better than him and her and make sure you post pretty photos on Insta. Otherwise, why even bother living? Like all this keeping up with the Joneses, you know, and it's just, I feel like it's, you know, a really difficult time to be alive, really. Like, it's just, I don't feel like it's getting any easier. I think it's actually, we're actually going in reverse direction. Having said that, though, I was reflecting that my parents and grandparents, they all used to say the same thing. You know, when they get older, like back in my day, it was a lot easier and better. And I'm like, am I just becoming one of those guys? Or
Yeah.
it's hard to know what the truth is.
I know you're really passionate about this topic, like men's mental health in general. And I guess you see this a lot with the clients that you work with. Like, what have you observed in the state of men's mental health over the last few years?
That's a very good question. And, you know, I work with a lot of men, and, you know, I told you before this interview that I feel like it's, you know, it's never been harder to be a man than it is right now. You know, it's just men are struggling, and, you know, suicides, 9 people will take their lives today in Australia, 7 will be men. You know, statistically, you know, divorce rate is up at almost 60%, which is unheard of. You know, and I feel like men have just lost their way with what's happened over the last sort of 10, 20 years. And there's not a lot of male role models. You know, it makes, and this may sound controversial, but it makes complete sense to me why, you know, the Andrew Tates and the Jordan Petersons are getting such a massive following with men, because men are just, they're just desperate for some sort of role models, you know, and it just makes sense that those guys who appear confident and whatnot are getting a lot of views and a lot of followers, you know. So I feel like, you know, mental health in particular in men, and of course, you know, women as well. It's just, for me, being a man myself, it's that where my lived experience can help others. You know, that's why I'm so passionate about it. You know, I want to be an advocate for men and help them to my best ability. And I mainly work with men in my private counselling practice, and it just gives me so much passion and drive to wake up in the morning and help the guys that I work with. You know, obviously I've got 2 boys myself as well, so I want to be the best role model for them, a role model that I feel like I didn't have myself with my dad, without laying any blame. It's just, it is what it is, you know. And as I mentioned, every male in my family is an alcoholic. I wanted to break that chain, and also break the chain of not being, you know, a strong role model to my kids. I want to be that strong role model for them, and they're at that age, you know, 10 and 8. You know, this is actually the best years because we're just before the teenage years, but we just finished all the growing up, walking, and all that years. So this is a good age. But, you know, in a few years, with my oldest in particular, you know, you've got the internet, and I think the internet there's the advantages to it, of course, but it causes so many problems with, you know. I was speaking to a child psychologist. She says that she sees mainly, you know, early 12 to 14-year-olds, the main addiction is gaming.
Oh, yeah.
Huge.
When I was leaving rehab, there was a young guy. He couldn't have been, you know, I think he was maybe around 16, who was going in for gaming at that time, and that was 5 years ago. But just, yeah, like it's crazy, you know. And then there's porn and everything else that you see on the internet for young children. I think it's disturbing. With
porn, I was reflecting before having chatted to a client about this. You know, we used to have like Playboy magazine and Pamela Anderson, and, you know, like that's as bad as it got, or that's sort
and
of,
you had to work hard to get your rocks off. Like, you were like, you know, like going under your parents' bed and like sneaking through things, or you'd be waiting for the modem to like, you know,
and then the dial-up internet, and then you have the slow
slowly. I mean, I don't even know how I know this. I think I would have done it with like, I think what groups of us would like for fun would sit around. You know, girls kind of consumed it a little bit differently, I think. But yeah, to your point, like it's just so accessible now, and I can't imagine. I obviously don't have children, but a lot of my friends do, and they're starting to, you know, get into those early teenage years, and yeah, there's some really scary stuff out there.
There is, yeah, and you know, with porn, it's such an addiction in itself, and obviously it sets the tone for, you know, for boys, what they see online. You could pretty much see anything, and they think that that's normal. And again, back to my point, we just saw Pamela Anderson, you know, and that was just, you know, maybe a VHS, is that what they were called back then?
Yes.
Like that was maybe floating around.
Pre-DVDs.
And you'd see, you know, a guy and a girl, like that's as bad as it got, sort of thing for us. So there's, and I think the worst is social media. For me, I'm seeing a lot of red flags there. It could be a great thing. You could connect with people. You can promote, you know, what you love and are doing, and spread the message. So there's a lot of benefits to it. And that's how it was sold to us. That's how it started. yet it has so much negative impact as well with the addiction aspect of it. You know, they've got like the smartest people in the world sitting there trying to make sure that they design, you know, the colors,
the dopamine,
everything is completely thought of by the smartest people in the world. But the worst thing I feel about it is the comparison aspect of it. Like you and I use the same photographer. I don't know if you know this, for our website. And I could tell you this, there's 3 photos that I have on my website. We took 300 photos, right? And even then, I chose the best 3. And even then, he put them through some filters and he did whatever lightning. And this was with lightning done already.
Yeah.
So what I'm getting is like, that's not really like, you know, me or whatever. This is all, you know, like very much the best version of me. But the problem is people see it on the internet, on social media, and they're like, oh, he looks like that. And I don't look like that. So we're comparing our internals, which we know how deep and dark they can be, to people's exterior.
Which is not real.
Which is very much not real a lot of the times. Because as I mentioned, it's 20 photos, 20 filters to get that one photo. Look at me, look how great my life is. You know, and you've heard stories come out where people have, you know, seemingly a perfect life online, then they commit suicide. And you're like,
of course,
what happened there? And
yeah,
that's an example of it.
You make such a good point. You know, social media, I have such a love-hate relationship with. You know, I find it to be such a powerful platform to connect, like you said, to share a message. But oh my gosh, I can totally be caught up in comparison, particularly in the space that I work in, because there's all of the, like, there's a lot of coaches out there who are, you know, it's just very sort of, I feel like it can be very money driven, very ego driven, and it gives me the ick. And I really struggle with that because part of my brain goes, well, you should be doing that too. And I'm like, but that doesn't feel good for me. That doesn't feel aligned for me. So I stick with what feels good. But then there's always that little voice that's like, well, should you do this? Should you do this? And I just find like always coming back to my meditation practice and coming back to what sits in with me and what feels true for me. Like I have to be guided by that, because you can't be, and this is for anybody when they're going on social media, don't let yourself be distracted by the noise, because it's exactly what it is. It's noise, and somebody's always going to be doing something different. It doesn't necessarily mean it's better. What's most important is that you stay true to you.
Great advice. I love that you said that.
Yeah.
I agree. And, you know, for some people, like I've completely got rid of Insta. I have Facebook and I check it from time to time. In the early recovery, like I was very addicted to those platforms, and it's a distraction for me. You know, I jump on there and I lose an hour, and it's an hour where I don't have to feel how I truly feel in early recovery.
And well, you know, my fiance deleted all social media about 3 years ago, and he's never been happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he has no idea what I post of him on Instagram.
Lucky guy, yeah. I'm with him on that, and good on him. Like, you know, I think it's fantastic that he's done that. And, you know, the dating apps, if there was the worst invention in history, it'd be dating apps.
Okay, so let's go there. I wanted to ask you, like, what are the things that have popped up for you since you've put the drink down?
Well, you know, the romance and finance I mentioned about now, possibly because I've sort of come from poverty. I have an interesting relationship with money where I'm not afraid of poverty because I've been there, done that, and I know I can survive it. So it's not a thing for me as far as money goes. Having said that, we spoke off camera as well, the importance of it, you know, with having kids and wanting to, you know, give them the opportunities that maybe I didn't have. And, you know, I want to go to Bali and I want to, you know, live that life. So, you know, all the sports and all the extracurricular activities, you know, you need money for it. So I'm not anti-money in any way. I'm also very cautious of knowing that money will never make me happy. Yet, you know, you still need to have, you know, money to be able to survive. And I know if I help enough people, that sort of things will take care of itself. In relation to what's come up for me is it's been, you know, intimate relationships. It's been women. You know, I really went down that path in the first few years of my recovery, as I know a lot of men do in early recovery. And, you know, last year I had to just have a break, you know, and it was suggested to me by men that I look up to in recovery who have also done the same thing. Because mentioning someone else pops up, that was my number one thing that popped up. The obsession, the lust, the fantasy, and that's often what it is. Like the actual sex aspect of it was probably at the bottom. I'm not anti-sex, I do enjoy sex, but that's not what was really consuming me. It was more the fantasy and the lust. And ultimately, you know, we can live in the past, we can live in the future. Not ideal, both of those scenarios. Ideally, we want to live in the present, But there is also a third almost dimension, I guess you can call it, which is fantasy. And my go-to was, let's go into fantasy and La La Land. And, you know, what I realized is I just lose myself there, and it just wasn't healthy. And so that's, you know, I've gone down a well-worn path. I took the actions that were suggested to me. You know, I sought help from a qualified psychologist, and, you know, I took the time off to have a break from women. I wasn't even talking to women for 8 months, right, last year. If someone said hello to me, I'll say hello back to be nice, and that's it. Like, that's as far as it went, right?
Yeah, because otherwise you can get those hits of validation just in a conversation with a woman, right?
If you're in that place where I was towards the end of the year before last, then yes, you can, certainly. And
so to have that control and awareness around the behavior, I think is really, really powerful. You know, it's not easy to do.
It's not easy. I'm not going to sugarcoat it.
But it's a great discipline, you know, and just to have that awareness around the behavior, I think is really powerful.
And I completely agree with you. And I got to a point now, I'm at a point now where it's as good as it's ever been. You know, it's amazing, and I really just want to help so many men with this, because this
you've walked the path.
I've walked the path. It's that lived experience. You know, I've also got the accreditation of university, and I've done the studies and all of that. So combining the two together, you know, for me, I feel like I'm in the place where I can really help men, and that's what really gets me passionate, and gets me going. So to tie back to the dating apps, right? It's just, it's horrific. You know, I saw this stats. I don't watch the news. Post-COVID, I stopped watching the news. So I don't actually know what's going on in the world, which is beautiful. I thought it'd be hard. It's not. I do pop onto Facebook from time to time. So, you know, anything big that happens, I'm aware of. And to touch on, so yeah, dating apps will stick to that. So I read this stat that like 3% of men get like 80% of the dates on there. It's like, it's so heavily skewed towards, because the dating apps don't want a guy to succeed on there. They want them not to have a good time on there, so they can pay for all the extras to, you know, increase their chances.
Right.
It's just the business model, right? But why I'm passionate about that is what it does to guys' self-esteem. You know, because the guy goes, oh, it must be ugly, because it's pretty much such a visual thing. And, you know, I don't often talk about this, and I feel like you're good at getting this out of people. And, you know, I was diagnosed with body dysmorphia myself, something that I don't often share about, but I want to share in case there's someone watching and it's potentially gone through that themselves. And I came into early recovery. I already knew I had it. It's about a part of my body that's always visual, so I can't hide it. And I know logically there's nothing wrong with it, and that's body dysmorphia for you, right? But I don't know. I can't switch that part of my brain off.
It's like the mind fixates on it, right? And
and it's horrible. I would not wish it upon anyone. And, you know, as I go along this journey, so a clinical psychologist who specializes in officially diagnosed me with it. And it was kind of relieving, to be honest with you, having that diagnosis, because I already knew I had it, but at least, like, I know I'm not insane. Like, yes, you have it. There you go. And then I honestly didn't have money to continue seeing him, and then he retired, and so I haven't really pursued it further. But in recovery, it's gotten better and better. Why? Because there's two things that happen in recovery. One is we increase our self-esteem, and two is we are very strongly encouraged to stop thinking about ourselves so much and focus on others.
Totally. I thought you might have said that
you
last
know,
piece.
And
help others. What do they say? When you help others, your own problems die of neglect, right?
That's, someone I look up to says that a lot. And I'm big on not completely, you know, problems sometimes do need addressing and looked at in a professional manner. But I completely agree with that statement. If I'm looking in the mirror and I've got low self-esteem and I'm self-obsessed to the max, and I'm looking in the mirror 100 times a day, of course I'm going to have body dysmorphia, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Because I'm going to find something that's quite wrong. And it was interesting for me to learn that a lot of supermodels have body dysmorphia.
Oh, yeah.
And the whole world's telling them, you're beautiful. Here's a few $1 million to validate that. It makes no logical sense is really what I'm getting at.
Yeah, wow. Hey, thank you for sharing that. I had no idea, and I really appreciate you getting to that level of depth and vulnerability for the audience, because there will be someone who can relate to that, I guarantee you. Yeah. Alex, I have Really loved this conversation today. I feel like I could talk to you forever, and I'm sure we're going to talk more off camera. But as we near towards the end of this episode, there's one final question that I want to ask you. Tell me, what are your 3 non-negotiables that allow you to live your life today authentic and fulfilled?
3 non-negotiables. I would say, look, for me, it's of course continuing to do recovery. And that's so three things for me. I'll go from from third, which are my kids. Now that might surprise some dads. What do you mean your kids aren't first? Kids are third. They're the third most important to me, and I'll explain why. In the sense of the second would be for me, the working the recovery. If I don't have recovery in my life, I lose the kids, I lose everything else. And so you might be thinking, well, what else? What's number one? And that's number one relationship I have every day that I need to work on daily is my connection to my God. And we haven't overly touched on God. And part of recovery is, it's encouraged for everyone to find, it's a spiritual program. It can be a higher power or a power greater than yourself. Some people like to call it the universe. I'm very comfortable now with the word God. I wasn't before.
Yeah.
I am now. And for me, it all starts and ends there. So if I can have a connection with God, then my recovery as well, and then I could be the best dad to my kids, and then I can help as many men as possible.
And how do you do that on a daily basis? Like, what are your practices that allow you to connect and enhance that connection with a higher power?
So prayer and meditation, non-negotiable. Every morning, and in particular every night, I'm on my knees and I say thank you to God for another day of being alive and of being clean and sober. It's important for me to practice humility, to realize that I'm not doing it. It's, my God is doing it for me. What I am doing is obviously putting the actions in. But so someone that has a lot of anxiety, so depression and anxiety seem to be the big two when people come into recovery. I'm blessed that I don't have depression anymore. Yet anxiety is something that can hit me from time to time. And I love the saying, you can't have faith in fear. And I'm such a fearful person, but what I'm actually scared of, I'm scared that things won't happen how I want them to happen. That's really the only fear I have, coupled with I'm not enough. So that's, it's never going to be a good place to be in. But when I have faith that all I need to do is put the right actions in, and I could get help from men that I respect about what those right actions are, then the results are completely left over to God. And as a result, I just get peace of mind, which is ultimately what I'm after. Peace of mind and to feel comfortable being Alex in this world.
Thank you for sharing that, Alex. If people are listening along today or watching and they want to discover you, reach out, where should they go?
Just my website, alexcrouchcounselling.com.au would be the easiest way to find me.
Fantastic. I'll make sure that I put that information in the episode show notes. We say here on Behind the Smile that when we recover loudly, no one need suffer in silence. So thank you for being here today and sharing your story.
You're welcome. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Alex.